Expelled from the kingdom, Saudi Arabia sends thousands of Pakistani laborers back home. What's driving the deportations? Also on today's program, Turkmenistan's dance with democracy. We get rare access inside what's considered one of the world's most repressive countries, just in time for elections. And a tale of two sons. North Korea's former leader turns 75. While one son pays his respects in Pyongyang, the other prompts a murder case thousands of miles away. I'm Imran Garda, and this is the Newsmakers. No one helps us, no one asks about us, and we're treated badly. These are the words of a migrant worker who was deported from Saudi Arabia back to Pakistan. For many like him, it's the final chapter in a saga that has involved being stranded in labor camps and unpaid for more than a year. Saudi authorities seem to be picking up the pace of forced returns. Local media reports that around 40,000 Pakistanis have been kicked out in recent months. Officials say many of them had expired visas, committed crimes, or are allegedly tied to terror groups. But are these concerns legitimate or just an excuse to rid the country of unwanted workers? Our newsmakers today are Saudi Arabia's migrant workers, as we ask why so many of them are being booted out.
In Saudi Arabia, city streets and glistening buildings emerge from the desert with the help of foreign hands. But now a major source of that labour is at the top of the deportation list. The kingdom has allegedly deported 40,000 Pakistani workers since October for violating visa and work rules and crimes like drug trafficking and theft, but also for alleged links to terrorism and groups like Daesh. Abdullah al-Sadoun, a member of the Consultative Assembly, told the Saudi Gazette that workers' religious and political inclinations should be vetted before they come. Because Pakistan itself is plagued with terrorism due to its close proximity with Afghanistan, the Taliban extremist movement was itself born in Pakistan. 82 Pakistanis suspected of terror and security issues are reportedly being held in intelligence prisons. But are other workers also being caught up in this security drive? These men were deported from Jeddah to Lahore this month.
The Saudis heartlessly detain and imprison workers, even with valid permits and all other documents. Then there is no one who could help us, not even our consuls. The Saudis are doing injustice.
Pakistan is a key source of labour for Saudi Arabia. Its workers have jobs in construction, cleaning and drive taxis in the kingdom. And they're also a target for deportations. In January 2014, the government announced it had deported about 250,000 migrant workers, including Pakistanis, for violating labour laws and residence issues. Security hasn't been openly used as a reason for deportations until now. So how real is the threat, and is the government using it as an excuse to send labourers away? Natalie Pohonen, the Newsmakers.
To discuss this, I'm joined now by Ahmed El Ibrahim. He's a Saudi Affairs Specialist in Riyadh. And from Berlin, Sebastian Sons. He's an Associate Fellow at the German Council on Foreign Relations and an expert on South Asian migrants in the Gulf. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Ahmed, why is Saudi Arabia deporting so many Pakistanis back to Pakistan?
Well, it's simply not the Pakistani nationality. First of all, the Pakistani, we have over 2 million. They are living among us. I mean, they contribute to the Saudi Arabian economy so much. However, there is a lot of security concern, to be honest with you. And also with that, there is this movement of what we call Saudization. So most of this number, probably you see, it's mostly of Ministry of Labor. These jobs that the Pakistanis, the professional Pakistanis used to do is now taken by the Saudi youth, and they are trying to fill these positions. Other than that, there is a segment of it where security, and there is a big chunk of it is what happened in the past 2 years, where the oil prices has been declined, and a lot of these big companies, like I wouldn't name the companies, but they have huge, hundreds of thousands of employees working for them. They had struggle in paying their salaries. So some of those also been let go back to Pakistan after arranging with the embassy of giving them their fees. And there is a few little chunk of this big, huge number percentage that has been involved lately in major terrorist attacks in Saudi Arabia. So this is, in short, basically why this number is huge. Maybe it's 40,000 or 39,000. But if you're talking about 2.5 million, this is just a small number.
Sebastian, do you accept any of that? Does any of that sound reasonable to you?
Yeah, I almost agree with everything Ahmed said. So when we look into the history of Saudi Arabia's migration policy, then deportations due to security, but mostly to economic reasons, has happened on a regular basis. When we look into the figures between 2005 and 15, 880,000 Pakistanis have been deported, and this is only to a small size due to the security concerns. So what Ahmed mentioned, the Saudization progress and the Nitaqat program, which have started a couple of years ago, is the main reason. So the severe pressure which is on the Saudi economy to bring the Saudi youth into the job market is, from my point of view, the main issue and the main reason why now there is a replacement going on from Pakistani or from South Asian workers to the Saudi youth. We cannot deny that the youth unemployment rate in Saudi Arabia is about 30 or 40%. So it's quite huge, and the Saudi kingdom and the Saudi government has to do a lot to tackle this problem.
Okay, there's something I'm struggling to understand here, Ahmed. So you say security issues, security problems. That sounds very nebulous. It sounds murky. If somebody is actively involved with Daesh or a terror group, surely they'll be arrested, they'll be looked into, not a part of some sort of mass deportation. Are you saying that from among these 40,000 people, it is clear that some are involved with Daesh?
Of course, I mean, it's known figures in the public. It's about, I need to be careful with numbers, but I'm going to say, and I'm going to be very safe. You're talking about 28 to 30 who they quote them, the government or the Ministry of Interior, conducting terrorism with ISIS in Saudi Arabia. However, there is a lot of, or a bigger circle who's giving this logistics, which has also been deported. Now, putting in mind, Saudi Arabia do understand Pakistan very well. They are very dear friends to our hearts, to Saudi Arabia, to the leaders. We have special relationship with Pakistan. However, lately, Iran has been using the Pashtun area to recruit into Saudi Arabia. Remember, Iran, the government of Iran is a militia. They do understand the language of recruiting, and they do understand how they want to infiltrate into the GCC countries. So they go to the area which is the Pashtun area,
can we take Iran and park them aside for a second?
People to send them to Saudi.
Sure. Can we take Iran and park them aside just for a second, Ahmed? Let's look at what Abdullah Saodoun from the Shura said, and I'm going to quote him. This was quoted in the Saudi Gazette, and this is what triggered all those other articles. Pakistani citizens must undergo religious and political checks before entering Saudi Arabia. And this is the speaker, of course, of the Shura. Pakistan suffers from terrorism due to neighboring Afghanistan. The extremist Taliban movement was created in Pakistan. Now, this is fascinating because, Ahmed, by applying those same standards to Saudi citizens, every Saudi anywhere else in the world will be deported. 15 of the 9/11 hijackers were Saudis. I have a number here, 2,093 Saudi citizens have been tallied fighting for Daesh. This is from the Saudi Ministry of Interior from December. So if you apply the same standard, every Saudi will be kicked out of every country they're in. Surely there's a problem with this standard, Ahmed.
Well, Imran, I wouldn't say that, but probably Mr. Saodoun, with my regards to him, he's panicking a little bit. And as a Saudi citizen, and like any citizen of the world, they should have these concerns. The challenges of terrorism that Pakistan is facing is equal to the terrorism that Saudi Arabia is facing. Pakistan is a strong ally to Saudi Arabia in fighting terrorism. So I agree with you and I voice myself with you. Everything Pakistan is facing, Saudi Arabia is facing. Every solution in fighting and vetting Islamists from conducting any terrorists in Saudi Arabia, it has to be the same application to Pakistan. We share the same concern. There is no difference. But it happens is you have a neighboring country, which is called Iran, the axis of evil, and they are basically recruiting poor Pakistanis in certain areas, and they are sending them to Saudi Arabia. In Saudi Arabia, we do have the same challenges that Pakistan is facing. So we are not in our own difference. However, those people unfortunately got caught and they've been conducting these things and they went back. And as I told you, it's a small percentage. It's not even mentionable. But you know, today terrorists and ISIS, Saudi Arabia really takes terrorism in account and is very strict with terrorism, as Pakistan is doing and fighting day to day. So there is no doubt about that. They're Pakistanis. They did something against the law. They have to be deported. If they conducted and they start doing...
Fair enough. I want to bring Sebastian in. Sebastian, in Lahore, at Lahore airport in early February, people were interviewed as they arrived from one of the flights. They were among the 27 deported. Now, it was interesting, from among those people interviewed, you had people saying there was no one to listen to. Even in Pakistan, they didn't have consular help. There were people who showed up there, their residency, their iqama. They said, I've not been accused of a crime. I've just been deported. I've lost my job and I've been deported. Is there a problem with that, Sebastian?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So I think there are two dimensions which we have to face. The first one is there have to be a better control of the recruitment agencies. During the last couple of decades, a recruitment mafia have been established, and they are completely out of control of most of the governments, especially when it comes to Pakistan, because Pakistan is so dependent on the remittances, and therefore there is a huge amount of corruption inside Pakistan when it comes to dealing with the recruitment agencies. This is point one. Point two is, of course, I was in Pakistan last year for a couple of months to conduct field research, especially on this regard. What is Pakistan civil society? What are Pakistani organizations, state organizations, do for their people overseas, especially in Saudi Arabia? And of course, it's a problem of treatment of migrants. So we heard a lot of stories from returnees inside Pakistan that they have been treated very badly, that there was no translator available, that they have to sign documents that are only available in Arabic, which they cannot speak. So I think here is a lot of space for improvement. But I would like to mention that the security concern is not a problem which comes from Pakistan, only from Pakistan. It is also a domestic problem inside Saudi Arabia. When we look into homegrown terrorists, when we look into the numbers of Saudi nationals who have joined the ranks and files of Daesh, and I think the Saudi government has completely understand this problem, that external terrorism or threats coming from abroad are only one side of the coin, and I think the more important part is what is happening inside Saudi Arabia. Why are Saudis in that high numbers joining Daesh in the last couple of years?
Final question for you, Ahmed, and very briefly, please. I know you have the ear of important people. It would suit the Saudi government and really strengthen your case if the Saudi government publishes proper statistics. So if 39,000 or 40,000 people have been deported, it spells out so many people, X many people were deported because of Daesh links, so many people were deported because of drug trafficking, and so on and so forth. And this group of people just lost their jobs because the company folded or it can't pay their salaries. Do you think it would help if the government published proper statistics so we can have a proper conversation holding on to exact numbers?
Imran, I agree with you, and I'm sure the statistics exist somewhere. And trust me, to move this and to mobilize this huge number Pakistani brothers, people here from Saudi Arabia back to Pakistan. This is it was organized with the Pakistani government, and there is no comment from the Pakistani government into the regard, because everything they do it aligned. Saudi Arabia is very sensitive when it comes to Pakistan. It's the Islamic ally and the backbone for Saudi Arabia relation to the east and to the region, as you know. So this issue that we are taking the final statement, but all the organization, it's coming from up top, from the government, and it was shared from MOI with the recipients in Pakistan. Now let me tell you just one more thing, that the Pakistanis in Saudi Arabia, they live in such a good life and such a nice life. You have some cases, definitely. I mean, you have millions and millions of expats in Saudi Arabia. We don't have 100% sealed system. So if there is a case of 10 people, 20 people, unfortunately they get into mistakes or things like that. This is a manageable percentage, even though it shouldn't happen. Today you talk, a lot of Saudis goes to London and the United States, and they send them back from the airport, and you don't know what the reason is. So I'm saying this shouldn't happen, but again, things happen for security reasons, for whatever reasons, sex reasons, a lot of things. So this is what I wanted to clear to you.
Ahmed Al Ibrahim and Sebastian Sons, unfortunately we are out of time. Thanks for joining us. This week, the president of Turkmenistan was elected to a third term in office after winning more than 97% of the vote. Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov has already been in charge for 10 years. During that time, the economy has been one of the world's fastest growing, thanks to large reserves of gas and oil. But, according to his critics, that's come at a price in a country where he retains an iron grip on power. Andrew Hopkins has this report from the capital, Ashgabat.
It's the day before the presidential election, and there's a celebration going on. 8 new apartment blocks containing more than 360 flats are being officially handed over to new residents. And it's quite clear who's to thank for these new buildings. The president, Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov. The streets of the Turkmen capital Ashgabat aren't so much paved with gold, more clad in white marble. You can drive around Ashgabat for quite some time, looking at brand new white apartment blocks, ornate buildings and monuments. Everywhere you go, there are signs that this city has been overhauled in the last 20 years. An economy fueled by the 4th largest gas reserves in the world has paid for this transformation, creating a society where domestic power supplies are heavily subsidized and petrol is 30 cents a litre. On a visit supervised by officials, they also took us to see this, a new multi-billion-dollar sports complex which will host the Asian Indoor Games later this year. But according to critics, it's all at a price. The state controls most aspects of political life, business and the media. It's third from bottom in the World Press Freedom Index, just above North Korea and Eritrea. And they say there's no democracy. President Berdimuhamedov won 97% of the vote in the latest election, standing against 8 other candidates, including 2 from opposition parties. But international observers say there were no problems.
Выборы сегодняшнего дня и выборы, которые проходили, например, 10 лет назад. И прогресс очевиден. Они стали более демократичными, они стали более открытыми. Они проходят в обстановке конкурентности.
Officials were keen to present to us a positive image of Turkmenistan. There was also a visit to the International Akalteke Hippodrome, where the president is shown in action on horseback, looking down on the arena that shows off the country's national emblem, famed for its speed and endurance.
Эта лошадь для туркменского народа не просто так, как игрушка какая-то, да? Эта лошадь всегда присутствовала рядом с туркменом. В любое время, это в праздники или период каких-то войн лошадь всегда была рядом. И до сегодняшнего дня эта лошадь считается для туркмен это гордость.
Now Ashgabat is full of monuments to that history, including this one. The Arch of Neutrality, which includes a gold statue of former President Saparmurat Niyazov. Officials were reluctant to talk about the man ridiculed in the West for his cult of personality and his decision to rename the days of the week and months of the year. But maybe this testament to going it alone and a neutral foreign policy shows best how Turkmenistan seems determined to do things its own way. Andrew Hopkins for the Newsmakers in Ashgabat, Turkmenistan.
Well, joining me now from Prague is Faru Yusupov. He's the acting director of Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty service in the Turkmen language. Faru, good of you to join us. Thanks so much. So 97% turnout. The president, Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov, got 98% of the vote. On a scale of 0 to 100, how free and fair were those elections in Turkmenistan?
Well, Imran, I did not observe directly these elections, but my colleagues in Ashgabat were under very strict circumstances with very high risks to their well-being. They managed to visit several polling stations, and according to my colleagues, to whom I do not have any basis not to believe, the turnout was quite low, very low, lower than the previous elections. And if you ask me about free and fair, I mean, these in Turkmenistan, in a country like Turkmenistan, you cannot organize free and fair elections to begin with, because everything is centered around one person, around the cult of personality of one person, one single person, which is President Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov.
I've got a newspaper, the Turkmenistan Post, my colleague Andrew Hopkins brought back after his deployment. It's fascinating because the first thing I noticed from the newspaper here is on the front page, on the day of voting, you have the other candidates, right? You have the other candidates. Most of them are looking down. One of them's only looking up, but he looks as if sort of he's been caught voting rather than happy. There's only one person who looks happy and looks in a state of bliss and peace. I guess, you don't have to speak the language to know who's going to win that election from that. My question to you then is, I guess, are the other candidates just props? Were they just props in this process? What do you think?
Yeah, you are right. I mean, they were props. They were just the things of the ritual. The elections in Turkmenistan are ritual, and they do not represent the will of the people. And these 8 candidates, 8 so-called rivals, they were not known to anyone. I mean, you can ask even my colleagues, journalists, they would not name you each of them, and they were there just to pretend, just to make a show that there is some sort of democracy, but there is not.
So let's say, okay, there's very little political freedom, there's very little journalistic freedom, and so on, but looking at some of the stats and some of the developments in the country over the past few years, he's given basic services to most, he's built infrastructure, reformed the education system, ensures many local kids are proficient in Turkmen, Russian, and English, for example. Would you say any of those things are good things? Are you willing to give him any credit?
There is, I would correct you, there is not little freedom. There is no freedom. Freedom of media is non-existent. Freedom of speech is non-existent. Freedom of will is non-existent. And those reforms that you are saying, that you mentioned, no one can guarantee you that those reforms were successful. Every single system in the country is corrupt. And wherever you go, you have to pay for all the basic services that the country says are free, be it medical services, be it if you want to get employed, or if you want to get to some education institution, everything you have to pay. And as an example for freedom of media, I can tell you that 2 of my colleagues are imprisoned at the moment, and one is serving a sentence of 3 years. It's been 1.5 years, and another one was arrested about 2 months ago, and on the absurd charges of possessing chewing tobacco.
Wow, chewing tobacco. Okay, Faru Yusupov, thanks so much for your insights into Turkmenistan. We hope to have you on the program again. Thanks for joining us from Prague. Even though he died more than 5 years ago, North Koreans are celebrating the 75th birthday of the man they still call their dear leader, Kim Jong-il. Take a look. That's all for this edition of the Newsmakers with me, Imran Garta. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.